Hello, this is David and Irene for the presentation. Here comes everybody. Everyone is a media outlet. Ch.3 is the author of the book Here Comes Everybody. Published in 2008, the book is about what happens when people were given the tools to do things together without needing traditional organizational structures. He's a vice provost for educational technology in NYU. He's an adjunct professor in the ITP program and a distinguished writer in the residence in the journalism department. His work focuses on the rising usefulness of the network, using decentralized technologies such as peer-to-peer sharing, wireless, software for social creation, and open source development. He believes that internet runs on love, emphasizing the collective nature of the internet. In the beginning of the chapter, the author mentioned his uncle, a small-town newspaperman, sends USA Today threat yet failed to acknowledge Internet's catastrophic change to the media institution. The professional tend to only seeing threats from other professional media outlets instead of amateurs. The author explained that the self-definition of profession from the newspaper industry are causing the industry's slow reaction to the Internet's impact. With Internet erasing the bar of publishing, individuals could provide news at nearly no cost. Thus, the professional news agency becomes the minority in comparison to the Internet with mass amateurs in publishing news. The web creates a new ecosystem for the news. Here's the question. What are the ecosystems for news right now? What is our part in this ecosystem? Weblogs and mass amateurization. The author gives an example of how Internet is already challenging the traditional news cycle, furthermore, the definition of news. In the example, the news about politician translates racist comments in another politician's birthday party were deemed insignificant by the majority of the news outlet and is supposed to die out after 24 hours. However, the Internet's blogger keeps the news alive and dives deeper into Lot's background. Lotz decided to apologize, yet it only makes his early racist comment more newsworthy. The link between newsworthiness and the publication is broken. The news can break into public consciousness without traditional press weighing in. Posting news on Internet becomes an alternative to publishing itself. A radical change is forming through a mass amateurization in media. Here's the question. What do you think about the cycle in the new age of media for newsworthiness? Are there any consequences toward news institutions become more democratized than ever? In other words, what will happen if everyone get to decide what is news instead of a few selected individuals or organizations? Presumably, they are telling the truth.
In praise of the scribes, in this part, the author uses the evolution of creating media from scripting to printing to illustrate the why and how this media changes. After the movable type has been invented, the scribers are afraid to lose their social status. And there's an interesting quote in this part, which is, professional self-conception and self-defense, so valuable in ordinary times, becomes a disadvantage in revolutionary ones. Because professionals are always concerned with the threat to the profession, most organizations believe they have much more freedom in action and much more ability to shape their future than they actually do. And evidence that the ecosystem is changing in ways they cannot control usually creates considerable anxiety, even if the change is good for society as a whole. And I've got an interesting question here, like, has anyone had this worry as well? As media and technology is developing so fast nowadays, I guess that's also why I choose to learn new technologies and how to make them instead of how to use them. And then the author discusses about mass amateurization breaks professional categories. In this part, the author talks about journalistic privilege, the Shield Law. However, he mentions as almost anyone can publish anything at any time, anyone can be a publisher, and then anyone can be a journalist. Then this privilege will be a huge loophole. Then he discusses the two effects of the mass amateurization has brought by analyzing the case for a photographer, and actually it's just same to all media-related industry. There will be more good amateur works, and the professional market will face threats. The difference between the amateur and professionals are already blurred. There's an interesting quote in this part saying that publishing used to require access to printing press, and as a result, the act of publishing something was limited to a tiny fraction of the population, and reaching a population outside a geographically limited area was even more restricted. Now, once a user connects to the internet, he has access to a platform that is at once global and free. The internet means you don't have to convince anyone else that something is a good idea before trying it. And for this part, I think it's very interesting and it's connected to chapter 4, which is also a very interesting chapter. Talks about tons of useless posts that don't have qualities on the internet. And for the reason why is that, because for published books, just as the author discusses, the articles and the authors have to convince a lot of person that it's worth publishing because the high cost of publishing. But now it's basically everyone can just publish anything with no cost.